Amid the majestic slopes of the Caucasus Mountains, where mist clings to jagged peaks and the wind whispers like the voices of ancestors, there lies a land called Abkhazia. On the surface, it appears to be just a dreamy stretch of the Black Sea coast, where fragrant pine forests reach down to kiss the waves. But hidden beneath layers of ancient stone, moss-covered watchtowers, and desolate mountain trails lies a secret that official history has never dared to mention: a dynasty of black kings who once ruled this land. Abkhazia is not merely a forgotten place. It is a symbol of what has been erased from the collective memory of humanity. In a time long past, this was no remote, empty region, as modern history books suggest. On the contrary, Abkhazia was once a center of power, where people with dark skin and African features lived, built, worshipped, and ruled. They were not slaves. They were not immigrants. They were indigenous kings, warriors, and priests, founders of the first cities in the Caucasus. Yet the traces of their existence gradually disappeared as the tide of Europeanization surged and white supremacy began to dominate maps and texts. The history of black people in Eurasia was distorted and buried. Abkhazia, along with the memory of its black kings, was relegated to legend, passed down orally in mountain villages rather than recorded in official documents. Today, if you visit Abkhazia, you'll find moss-covered stone walls and mysterious stone circles lying still in the deep forest. No one knows who built them, but if you look closely, you'll see circular architecture, arrangements aligned with star constellations, and carvings bearing stylistic similarities to Nubian or ancient Egyptian designs. The local people still speak of ancestors with skin the color of the sun, who came from the south bearing knowledge and sacred rites. Abkhazia is not just a forgotten land, it is a living monument to a suppressed chapter of history, a symbol of memory that refuses to be entirely erased. In the freezing mists of the Caucasus, the whispers of black kings echo through the stones, reminding us, history is not only written in white ink, it is also etched in blood, memory, and the words left unsaid. When people think of Russia, they often imagine onion domes dusted with snow, icy rivers, and a history steeped in Slavic grandeur. But there is a chapter in Russia's history, or rather, a chapter removed from it, that speaks of a people with dark skin, tightly curled hair, and eyes burning like embers. They were not foreigners. They did not come from distant lands. They were the Abkhazian people, a black nation that once lived, built, and ruled on this very soil, thousands of years ago. The Abkhazians were not slaves, nor were they Africans exiled to the cold edges of Europe. On the contrary, they were kings, warriors, monks, and native settlers, direct descendants of the first African humans who left the mother continent and sowed the seeds of civilization across Eurasia. Modern science has proven that all modern humans originate from Africa, spreading across the globe from there. But what few dare to acknowledge is this: long before light-skinned tribes migrated from Central Asia or Europe, people with dark skin had already lived and thrived in many regions, including the Caucasus, in what is now southern Russia. Among them, the Abkhazians preserved some of the clearest physical and cultural traces of ancient African heritage. They lived along the Black Sea coast, bordering Georgia and Turkey, establishing city-states, monasteries, and temples. They were a crucial link in the prehistoric cultural network of Eurasia. Their folk traditions, circle dances, polyphonic chanting, ancestral rituals, and even their linguistic structures bear uncanny similarities to West, Central, and East African cultures. Old paintings and early 20th century photographs depict Abkhazians with broad noses, full lips, and naturally curly hair, hallmarks of African ancestry. Many scholars believe they may be descended from Nubians, ancient Egyptians, or Nufians communities that migrated north tens of thousands of years ago, carrying with them advanced knowledge of architecture, astronomy, and deep spirituality. From the 18th to the 20th centuries, as the Russian Empire expanded and launched its campaign to homogenize the Caucasus, a vast operation began to whiten the region. Black royal dynasties and noble families were erased. Cultural symbols were destroyed. and the entire story of the Abkhazian people as a black indigenous nation was pushed to the margins of history. Under the Soviet Union, speaking of ethnic diversity or non-Slavic origins became taboo. Portraits of black-featured Abkhazian nobles were hidden away in archives. Archaeological records were neglected. The ancient Abkhazian language was gradually replaced by Russian and other Slavic dialects, yet memory does not vanish easily. In remote mountain villages of the Caucasus, Abkhazian elders still tell tales of ancestors with sunset skin, of sun kings, and of the first cities built of black stone, aligned with the stars. Today, with the rise of technology, especially artificial intelligence, those blurred fragments of history beginning to resurface. By cross-referencing ancient maps, genetic data, linguistic patterns, and oral traditions, researchers are slowly confirming the existence of black peoples in ancient Russia, of which the Abkhazians are a vivid testament. They are not an anomaly, they are a part of human history, one that was once silenced but is now rising again from memory. They once ruled this frozen land, and their bloodlines, though diluted and lightened, remain embedded in every mountain, every stone, every song that echoes through the pine forests of Abkhazia. History is not merely a sequence of events that happened. History is power. Whoever controls the narrative controls how we perceive the world. And for centuries, a biased story has been told over and over again, that white people are the center of civilization, while black people are peripheral, appearing only as slaves, migrants, or colonized subjects. Yet, a part of the truth has been distorted, whitewashed, and buried in silence. The presence, and even dynastic power, of black people in lands we now call Europe and Asia. One striking example, the land of Abkhazia and the Abkhazian people, once a vibrant civilization ruled by black kings, nearly erased under the heel of colonialism and white supremacist ideology. From the 17th to the 20th century, a surge of European nationalism swept across the continent. Along with it came tools of power meant to legitimize conquest, colonization, and the suppression of non-European peoples. One such tool was racial science, a pseudoscience that classified humans by skin color and redefined civilization according to white standards. White scholars of the time had no hesitation placing black people among the inferior races, declaring them without history or driven solely by instinct. As a result, every trace of civilizations once built by black people, especially outside of Africa, was blurred, rebranded, or excluded from mainstream history. Abkhazia, once home to black kings, monks, and warriors of African descent, was not spared. Through the lens of the Russian Empire, and later, the Soviet Union, the existence of an indigenous black population was deemed unacceptable, contradicting the ideal of a pure white Russia that rulers wanted to preserve. The whitewashing of Abkhazian history did not stop at textbooks. It infiltrated every level of propaganda. Ancient portraits of black nobility were hidden or repainted with lighter skin. Folk legends with African elements were altered or reinterpreted with Christian symbolism. Traditional languages, instruments, and dances were banned or labeled barbaric, forcibly replaced with Slavic norms. Archaeological evidence, such as ancient stone temples or Egyptian-like inscriptions, were dismissed as untraceable or simply ignored. In the 19th and 20th centuries, many noble Abkhazian families with African features were forced into interracial marriage to improve the bloodline. This was not just biological violation, it was a campaign to erase racial memory, through both blood and culture. Yet like a river flowing beneath thick ice, the truth never entirely disappears. Abkhazian elders still whisper stories around the fire of bronze-skinned ancestors who built temples aligned with the stars and ruled this land before the snow ever fell. Moss-covered stone statues still stand in the mountains. Ancient stone circles remain in the forests, silent witnesses of a deliberately forgotten era. Today, as artificial intelligence begins analyzing old maps, comparing languages, and studying genetic patterns, what was once dismissed as myth is being restored as historical truth. The whitening of the Abkhazian people and other black communities that once lived in Eurasia is not just a stain of colonialism. It is a bitter reminder of how easily we accept repeated narratives without ever asking, who is telling the story? Who was forced into silence? It is time not only to reread history but to rewrite it, more honestly, more diversely, and more justly. In this journey, the Abkhazian people, long forgotten in the white snows of history, are an awakening point. For centuries, official history was written by those in power, usually white empires. Anything that contradicted dominant ideologies, such as the existence of black peoples in Eurasia, was hidden, distorted, or erased from humanity's collective memory. But today, a new force has entered the historical arena: artificial intelligence AI. Unbiased and unfettered by colonial mindsets, AI operates a neutral tool capable of analyzing millions of forgotten data points, from maps, text and genetic material to language recordings, to reconstruct a more truthful image of the past. One of its most important revelations is emerging: that many black communities once lived, thrived, and even ruled in the territories we now call Russia and the Caucasus. Thousands of ancient maps, long forgotten in European and Middle Eastern archives, clearly depict the names and symbols of African-featured peoples living along the Black Sea. Many maps describe kingdoms of black people in the Caucasus, or regions bearing names of North African linguistic origin. Trained to cross-reference documents across time and geography, AI has uncovered hundreds of parallels between Arabic, ancient Greek, and early Christian records. What was once seen as error or myth is now increasingly recognized as tangible traces of a lost civilization. One of the most enduring markers of any culture is its language. AI has helped analyze the phonetic structure of the Abkhaz language and found remarkable similarities with African languages such as Efik Igbo and Bantu, not only in vocabulary, but also in tonal rhythm, complex consonant clusters, and inverted syntax. These cannot be mere coincidence. By comparing millions of audio samples, texts, and inscriptions, AI has reconstructed linguistic links between Africa and the Caucasus that the mainstream academic world once deemed impossible. Perhaps the most irrefutable evidence comes from genetics. With millions of DNA samples now digitized and analyzed by AI systems, certain ethnic groups in the Caucasus, including the Abkhazians, have been found to carry specific sub-Saharan African genetic markers, particularly haplogroup C and L, which are most common in East and Central Africa. AI doesn't just stop at identifying DNA. It also cross-references prehistoric migration patterns, compares them with archaeological and paleoclimatic data. Thanks to this, a new picture emerges. Prehistoric Africans migrated to the Caucasus region, bringing with them agricultural techniques, religious practices, architecture, and social structures, laying the foundations for early civilizations in what is now southern Russia. Artificial intelligence is not just a tool for retrieving information. It is gradually becoming a digital archaeologist, recovering erased stories, exposing falsified or deliberately buried evidence. From ancient photographs of Abkhazian nobility in Russian archives to inscriptions in scripts resembling Meroitic from Nubia, AI is stitching together history with greater fairness, proposing new hypotheses about the role of black people in the formation of ancient Eurasian societies, not merely as victims, but as creative agents, leaders, and pioneers. AI cannot replace historians, but it can break the barriers built by human prejudice. While people are easily influenced by politics, religion, and race, AI, with its emotionless processing power, can be a neutral tool for restoring memories that were manipulated or buried. And it is thanks to AI that we are beginning to see a truth long obscured, that black people were not only part of Africa, but also part of Eurasian history, from the misty land of Abkhazia to the southern highlands of Russia. In the Caucasus Mountains, shrouded in mist year-round, beside the ancient Black Sea, lives a people long forgotten by history, the Abkhazians. Yet beneath the dust of time, what is emerging is a startling truth, that they are not only descendants of ancient black populations in Eurasia, but also carriers of a sacred African-infused cultural heritage no less profound than that of ancient Nubia or the Congo. To the ancient Abkhazians, political power was inseparable from spiritual authority. A king was not just a ruler, but a direct descendant of divine ancestors. From oral legends passed down for generations, we find depictions of a primordial mother goddess, demigod heroes, and a soul tree linking humans to the cosmos, strikingly similar to the spiritual systems of the ancient Congo Bantu and Nubian peoples. AI analysis of Abkhaz oral traditions has uncovered recurring motifs found in African cultures: cycles of rebirth, the power of ancestral spirits, the shaman's mediating role, and rituals using drums, music, and fire. Abkhazian music is a complex symphony, layered harmonies, shifting rhythms, and circular polyphonic vocal structures. These features are extremely rare in the Caucasus, yet common in sub-Saharan Africa, particularly in regions like the Congo, Nigeria, and Ethiopia. Some anthropologists, upon first hearing ancient Abkhazian folk music, described it as an African song lost in the Caucasus Mountains. AI analysis of Abkhazian rhythms revealed clear parallels with 5-beat and 7-beat structures used in Yoruba and ancient Nubian ritual music. Even the traditional string instrument of the Abkhazians, the abkhist, bears a remarkable resemblance in design and structure to the kora, a sacred instrument of the Mande people in West Africa. Could this be a surviving trace of an ancient migration route from Africa to the Caucasus? The ancient Abkhazians did not sing for entertainment, they danced to worship, to heal, to pray for harvest. Their traditional ceremonial dances were always performed in circles, combining rhythmic footwork with drums and communal chants. In the oldest Abkhazian festivals, sacred dances were performed where men disguised themselves as lions or eagles, reenacting ancestral spirit possessions, much like the masked rituals of Congo tribes or the Great Lakes peoples of Africa. These rituals did not stem from Christianity or Islam, but were preserved from prehistoric times, another piece of evidence pointing to deep African origins within their culture. The Abkhazian language, while classified under the Northwest Caucasian group, contains a large number of root words and grammatical structures not found in any other Eurasian language. AI has discovered numerous similarities between Abkhaz intonation and that of Wolof and Igbo, from the rise and fall of tones to the emphatic stress at sentence endings used to convey emotion. Even ancient words for body, soul, and deity in Abkhaz bear structural resemblance to equivalent terms in Bantu and ancient Ge'ez, the classical language of Ethiopia dating back over 2,000 years. If the ancient Abkhazians possess such strong markers of African cultural DNA, then why has their story been buried in silence? The answer likely lies in the dominance of white empires, from the Russian Empire to the Soviet Union, and even to 19th century European scholars, where dark skin and African origins were deemed incompatible with the image of Northern civilization. But today, thanks to artificial intelligence, that silence is being broken, and every Abkhazian dance, every traditional song, every peculiar word in their language, now echoes as a call from a lost African civilization hidden within the icy lands of the Caucasus. History didn't begin in Europe. It began on the Black Continent, where the first humans walked, loved, fought, and dreamed. But few realize, Black people had already set foot in Europe and Asia since prehistoric times, tens of thousands of years before the rise of white empires. They came not with chains around their necks, but with the free steps of the world's first pioneers. Modern history often distorts the image of Black people, framing them within the tragedy of slavery and subjugation, but the truth runs much deeper. Long before Rome, before the Germanic or Slavic tribes, the first Homo sapiens who left Africa around 70,000 years ago were, in fact, our ancestors. They followed rivers, crossed deserts and mountains, and entered the Middle East before spreading across Europe and Asia. These were voluntary migrations, not forced ones. And notably, these people still bore distinct African features: dark skin, curly hair, broad noses. The emergence of lighter skin tones only came thousands of years later, as an adaptation to the low sunlight climates of the north. One of the most groundbreaking discoveries in human history is the Cheddar Man, a 10,000-year-old skeleton unearthed in Somerset, England. In 2018, scientists used DNA analysis to reconstruct his face, and the results stunned the world. Cheddar Man had dark skin, curly hair, and striking blue eyes. This was not an immigrant. Cheddar Man was a native of Stone Age Britain, an ancestor of many modern Europeans. His discovery shattered the myth that whiteness is Europe's origin and clearly affirmed black people were an inseparable part of the early story of Europe. Not just in Britain, but across Eurasia, archaeological evidence reveals the ancient presence of black people. In France, the prehistoric cave paintings of Lascaux depict figures with curly hair and broad noses, signs of African heritage. In Russia and the Caucasus, skeletons dated 5,000 to 10,000 years old exhibit cranial features of African descent. In India and Southeast Asia, many indigenous tribes like the Andamanese, Eta Philippines, and Veda Sri Lanka retain genetic traits closer to Africans than even today's continental Africans. These groups were not out of place. They were ancient natives, living remnants of prehistoric migrations that modern history has tried to erase. Genetic studies reveal that the shift from dark to lighter skin was a biological adaptation to Northern Europe's low UV light. When Africans lived for thousands of years in the north, their skin gradually lightened to better absorb vitamin D. This was not racial mixing, and certainly not a sign of superior evolution, as racist theories once claimed. This also explains why many modern Europeans still carry African ancestral genes, even if their skin has lightened over generations. Modern DNA research shows that most Europeans carry between 1 to 4% genetic heritage from prehistoric black ancestors. This truth was long buried by 18th-19th century European scholars who, through racial science, sought to justify white supremacy. Ancient black remains were reconstructed with lighter skin. Migration maps were redrawn to remove African traces. Black people were boxed into the narrative of slavery. But today, thanks to advances in genetics, 3D technology, artificial intelligence, and independent archaeology, we are slowly recovering the truth. Black people were not just part of history, they were the root of human history in both Europe and Asia. When we think of black people, we often picture sub-Saharan Africa or empires like Nubia, Mali, and Congo. But few know that in the Caucasus, a region once thought to be the cradle of the white race, there once existed a black kingdom with cultural traditions astonishingly similar to those of Africa. That kingdom was Colchis, a name that has nearly vanished from the historical memory map. Colchis, or Colchis, as per Greek transliteration, was an ancient kingdom located in it is now western Georgia, near Abkhazia on the Black Sea coast. This region is famed in Greek mythology as the land where Jason and the Argonauts sought the Golden Fleece, a symbol of wealth and magic. But behind the myths lies a little-known reality. Colchis was once inhabited by black communities with curly hair and religious practices resembling ancient Egypt. This is not speculative fantasy, it is a claim made by none other than one of Western history's founding figures, Herodotus, the 5th century BCE Greek historian. In his famous work Histories, Herodotus wrote that the people of Colchis had dark skin, curly hair, and practiced circumcision, something he had only seen in Egypt and Ethiopia. This convinced him they were of the same origin as the Egyptians, or at least descendants of an ancient migration from the Nile Valley northward. The question is, how did black people from Africa end up in the remote, frigid mountains of the Caucasus, a place assumed to be purely European? The answer lies in prehistoric migrations and vibrant intercontinental trade and cultural exchanges that were more dynamic than we assume. In antiquity, the Black Sea was not a barrier, but a water highway linking East Africa, the Middle East, and the Caucasus. Besides Herodotus' account, cultural and archaeological evidence also shows that the kingdom of Colchis practiced African-inspired religious rituals, sun worship, ancestral veneration, and the use of sacred animal symbols like lions, snakes, and eagles. Many motifs on pottery, armor, and architecture from Colchis bear uncanny similarities to those found in Nubia and Kush, to powerful African civilizations of the Upper Nile. Music, ancient language, and matrilineal succession inheritance through the mother were also striking parallels between Colchis and early African societies. The answer is clear. Modern colonialism and white supremacy deliberately erased or obscured African traces in Eurasia. From the 18th century onward, European scholars, redrawing the historical map of the Caucasus, often chose to portray the Colchians with light skin or omit Herodotus' inconvenient descriptions altogether. In modern textbooks, Colchis is only referred to as a Proto-Georgian culture, with no mention of black inhabitants, but technology is changing that. With the aid of AI, facial reconstruction from ancient skulls, and ancient DNA decoding, today, as scientists are beginning to reveal a forgotten truth, black people were present and played key roles in the formation of many Eurasian civilizations, including Colchis. Genetic analysis of excavated remains in western Georgia has shown close genetic ties to East African populations. Some ancient language groups still retain vocabulary and rhythms similar to Nubian. All of this is forming a radically new historical picture, one where Africa is not just the origin of humanity, but a living stream running deep through Europe's civilizational memory. History is not only recorded by the victors, but also edited by them. In the majestic Caucasus Mountains, once a crossroads of cultures and races, there lived a people deeply marked by ancient African heritage, the Abkhazians. Yet by the 19th century, they had almost silently and brutally disappeared from the historical map. The culprit, a massive military campaign by the Russian Empire. Known as the Caucasus War, the Abkhazians lived along the eastern shore of the Black Sea, in what is now northwestern Georgia. Centuries ago, they were distinguished by their dark brown skin, curly hair, ancestor worship beliefs, and drum dances that mirrored the cultures of the Nile and Congo. Their ancestors may have descended from ancient East African migrations that settled in the Caucasus via the Black Sea. For centuries, Abkhazia was a self-governed society with a unique culture, distinct music, a matrilineal clan system, and a belief in divine kingship where leaders were seen as descendants of the gods. But everything changed in the 19th century. Between 1817 and 1864, the Russian Empire launched the Caucasus War, a series of military campaigns to fully conquer the Caucasus region. The goal was to subjugate its diverse ethnic groups, assimilate them into a Slavic civilization model, and eliminate what Russia saw as threats: military, religious, and racial. The Abkhazians, with their distinct culture, non-Slavic origins, and spiritual independence, quickly became a primary target. This war was not just armed conflict, it was a systematic campaign of genocide. After defeating Abkhazian resistance forces, the Russian army carried out mass killings, burned villages, and expelled hundreds of thousands from their homeland. It is estimated that up to 90% of the Abkhazian population at the time was either killed, forced to migrate to Turkey or the Middle East, or coerced into intermarriage with Slavic and Cossack groups in an effort to cleanse their undesirable origins. Forced marriage, linguistic and cultural assimilation, along with bans on native language use and ancestral rituals, gradually erased the memory of the Abkhazians' black heritage from collective consciousness. Today, if you search for Abkhazians, you'll find images of a light-skinned people with distinctly Europeanized features. No one speaks of the time when Abkhazians were described as curly-haired, dark-skinned, or performing ritual dances reminiscent of Nubia. Stories of black ancestors now survive only in whispered folklore or outright denied in official Russian records. This was not just physical erasure, it was a genocide of memory, where a bloodline, a cultural identity, and the African roots of the Caucasus were permanently whitened. But now, with the help of artificial intelligence AI, ancient DNA sequencing, and digital historical mapping, some scientists are beginning to restore the traces of ancient Abkhazians whose origins were far from whitewashed as history once claimed. Machine learning models comparing ancient and modern Caucasian genetic data have revealed strong genetic blending and the presence of East African DNA clusters in the ancestry of the Abkhazians. This partially confirms what Herodotus and Arab scholars once claimed, that the peoples of the Caucasus, particularly in Abkhazia, had a past far closer to Africa than previously thought. The story of the Abkhazians is a vivid example of an old saying, "History does not die, it is only forced to be forgotten." And now, with technology offering us a new lens into the past, perhaps it is time to rewrite the erased chapters not for glory, but for justice and truth. When we speak of ancient African heritage, we often think of the Egyptian pyramids, the Nubian dynasties, or the stone cities of Zimbabwe. But few would imagine that deep within the icy Caucasus modern-day Abkhazia there once existed architectural and linguistic traces that echo the lands south of the Sahara, ancient Africa. For centuries, mainstream scholars ignored or dismissed such connections. But today, interdisciplinary research from linguistics and archaeology to semiotics is shedding light on a forgotten truth. The ancient Abkhazians may have been descendants of an African migration that brought with them a distinctive language, architectural knowledge, and belief system. The Abkhaz language, part of the Northwest Caucasian language family, has long been regarded as one of the world's most complex phonological systems, with up to 58 consonants. Yet some modern linguists have found astonishing parallels between Abkhaz and certain West African languages, especially those in the Niger-Congo group, for example, Nigeria, Ghana, Togo. Notable features include verb-suffix grammar structures common in many African languages but rare in Europe, tonality and pitch modulation, strikingly similar to Yoruba and Igbo. Ancient Abkhaz vocabulary includes words that resemble terms for divinity, ancestors, and spirits in Nigerian languages. These overlaps have led scholars to ask, are these mere linguistic coincidences, or remnants of an ancient African migration to the Caucasus leaving their mark on local linguistic frameworks? Architecture offers even more striking evidence. Ancient Abkhazian structures bear unmistakable African traits, particularly in the shapes and symbols carved into temples, stone graves, and sacred ceremonial sites. At numerous archaeological locations in the Abkhazian mountains, researchers have uncovered circular stone temples, aligned precisely with celestial constellations and solar rise points eerily similar to the religious temples of ancient Nubia and Egypt. Defining traits include foundations aligned to star constellations, especially Orion, a revered figure in Egyptian religion associated with Osiris. Solar symbols, serpents, and double rings, often decoded as metaphors for life-death rebirth cycles, a central belief in both Nubian and Sahelian African spirituality. Carved glyphs resembling hieroglyphs, many of which closely resemble the Meroitic script of Nubia or early Proto-Egyptian writing systems. Though most modern Abkhazians no longer use the ancient language or understand the meanings of symbols carved into their temples, international archaeologists have begun digitizing and comparing ancient Caucasian inscriptions with African iconography. Preliminary results reveal over 60% of symbol samples match in shape or meaning with Nubian cultural symbols. Several recurring character clusters around stone altars may relate to solar sacrifice, rituals, or coming-of-age ceremonies, both prevalent in prehistoric Africa. This leads to a bold but plausible hypothesis. Ancient Abkhazians were not merely influenced by Africa, they were a northern branch of that legacy, carrying the intellectual and spiritual wealth of African civilization during a northward migration thousands of years ago. The root cause for the erasure likely lies in ethnic politics and colonial academic bias. For centuries, most Russian and Western scholars rejected the idea that the Caucasians regarded as white could have African origins? Acknowledging this would mean rewriting the entire ethnic structure of ancient Europe, something generations of historians were reluctant to do. Yet language and architecture, not easily erased, for they are etched in stone, in the rhythms of speech, in the way people pray and build. And now, the ancient temple stones of Abkhazia seem to whisper to the world, "We were once a part of Africa and we never truly disappeared." When people envision Russian nobility in the late 19th century, they imagine white lineage families in gold-embroidered uniforms astride horses, beside frost-covered castles in the Caucasus or Siberia. Yet tucked away in lesser-known archives of certain Russian museums, particularly in Sochi, St. Petersburg, and Tbilisi, survive photographs of nobles unmistakably of African descent. Curly hair, broad noses, dark skin, draped in fur robes and adorned with imperial Russian medals. They were neither slaves nor mixed-race newcomers. They were the Abkhazian people, the indigenous inhabitants of the Caucasus, and descendants of an ancient African bloodline almost entirely erased. The late 1800s marked the height of imperial portrait photography. The Tsarist regime permitted photographers to travel to frontier regions like the Caucasus to document ethnic groups loyal to the throne. As a result, we now possess exceptionally vivid portraits of local nobility, among them a group of Abkhazians with distinctly African features. Notable features in the photographs include deep brown or dark skin, impossible to confuse with the lighter skin majority of the Caucasus, tightly curled hair or coil patterns, styles prevalent in Sahel or Central African populations, broad noses and full lips, anthropological traits common among African peoples, not the result of recent intermarriage. Traditional Abkhaz ceremonial attire, fur-lined robes, occasionally decorated with Romanov medals confirming noble status. Archived records show that many pictured nobles belonged to traditional Abkhaz lineages, serving as military or administrative leaders under the Romanov dynasty. Some held titles such as regional governors or military officers. Exemplary figures include Rustamzan Abkhazovich, commander of the Gagra region, lauded as a courageous warrior of the ancient bloodlines of mountain and glacier. Fatima Gulia, a noble woman from the distinguished Gulia family, who entertained delegations from Russia and the Ottoman Empire. Described by a French officer as possessing a strength worthy of ancient Egyptian sculpture, they were not treated as exotic Africans as their neighbors in Western Europe might have been. They were recognized as part of the local fabric of Caucasus, with a rich indigenous culture before Russification. During the 20th century, following assimilation campaigns and especially under Soviet rule, any indications of African ancestry within the Abkhaz community were deliberately erased by enforced ethnic homogenization. The identity Black Caucasian became taboo under rigid racial classifications. Many photographs were hidden. Others were mislabeled as mixed race or African servants in the court, despite clear evidence of indigenous ancestry. The political agenda of empire blurred historical truth. An empire could not admit its elite once had African roots. Today, anthropologists, art historians, and geneticists are re-examining these images for truth. Advances in facial recognition, anthropometric analysis, and deep learning colorization of old photographs have helped resurrect clearer images of these forgotten nobles. And the truth is undeniable. They were not Europeans of African descent. They were native to the Caucasus with genuine African features. These rare portraits are more than mere anthropological proof. They're a statement that African history is not confined to the Sahara or the savannas of Kenya, but is etched deep within the Caucasus, hidden beneath snow and layers of Russian imperial control. This is a history that must be brought back, not to sow division, but to reconnect fragmented heritage between Africa and Eurasia, between black and white, between memory and oblivion. In the snow-capped heights of the Caucasus and remote Abkhaz villages, one tradition has never died. Despite wars, repression, and cultural assimilation under Tsarist and Soviet regimes, the collective memory of the Abkhazians preserves stories of black ancestors from the south who rode horses like Nubian cavalry and worship the sun as ancient Egyptians did. This is not a fairy tale. It is the survival of memory from a civilization buried by prejudice and snow. During traditional Abkhaz holidays, elders still gather around fires to recount tales of brave black people from distant southlands who settled here in antiquity. They describe tall, dark-skinned ancestors with tightly curled hair, skilled in horsemanship and archery akin to Arab or Mongol cavalry. A grandmother from Gadara recalls, "My great-grandfather said our ancestors came from far to the south. They crossed valleys on horseback, fearless of snow or wind, believing the sun to be their sacred god." These oral traditions, though undocumented, have repeated consistently across generations, suggesting they're not myth, but a deeply ingrained national memory. Under the Soviet Union, ethnic assimilation policies suppressed most traditional worship and folklore. Mention of black origins or African ancestors was deemed superstition, counter-revolutionary, or anti-proletarian. Elders recount being forbidden to wear traditional black and gold bordered garments, once symbols of the sun, casting shadows on black riders. Children were barred from hearing sun god legends or stories of black forebears as unscientific. Many symbols in ancient stone sanctuaries, sun circles, eye motifs were destroyed or labeled heretical. Yet during this repression, the stories persisted not on paper, but in hearts. Despite bans, some rituals survived under the guise of village festivals or ancestral remembrance days. At sunrise, Abkhazians would light fires, sing ancient songs, and wear black wool caps with gold rims believed to symbolize sun riders of Southlands. Linguistic analysis of traditional songs reveals many words in common with Cushitic languages and other Nubian-speaking groups, evoking themes of warriors, deserts, horses, and light. A French researcher noted early in the 20th century, Abkhazians never claimed they come from Africa, but their stories always point south towards light, horsemen crossing rivers of blood, the sun shining through a snowy night. That is African memory. In the modern world where written records are deemed the only valid history, oral cultures are often dismissed as having no real history. Yet with the Abkhazians, elders' stories absent from books are key to reconstructing a deliberately erased chapter. Tales of black ancestors, Nubian riders, and sun worship aren't just cultural symbols, they are living evidence of a deep, millennia-long connection between the Caucasus and Africa. Today, as global movements toward decolonizing history gain momentum, Abkhazian oral memory be one of the richest pieces of the puzzle, because they reveal not only the story of one people, but of a world richer in color, diversity, and depth than textbooks suggest. If official history is a beating drum, then folk memory is the embered fire beneath the ashes, and that fire, though suppressed, still smolders quietly in the snowy villages of the Caucasus. In dominant historical narratives, black people are often portrayed as conquered, enslaved, or marginalized at the edges of great civilizations. Textbooks tend to show chained people sent across the Atlantic, serving white colonial masters. But this is only a tiny, even distorted fragment of a far vaster story. Before being confined to the role of coerced slaves, black people once filled roles as kings, political elites, and cultural architects across many lands, even in Russia. Though modern assimilation, erasure, and bias have dimmed their legacy, it is not gone, it is buried, waiting to be uncovered. Few realize that in the Russian borderlands of the 18th and 19th centuries, there existed indigenous black nobility such as the Abkhazians in the Caucasus, or descendants of Nubian warriors brought to serve the Tsar. Many rose to positions of leadership or were granted land to govern border regions. They did not arrive in Russia as American-style African slaves. They were not economic migrants. They came as warriors or were already established long before the concept of modern Russia. Diary entries, paintings, and 19th century documents preserve images of black-skinned nobles, officers, and scholars dressed in Kavkaz royal attire, seated alongside Russian aristocracy. Such presence contradicted colonial racial narratives that marginalized black people as civilization-less. so they were erased from official records. Soviet-era histories do not mention the African origins of Abkhazians. Rare photographs remain hidden in museum archives, rarely displayed. Folk stories about black ancestors were dismissed as unscientific folklore. Collective memory was erased not because it didn't exist, but because it didn't fit the dominant ideology. Ironically, the more modern fields of archaeology, linguistics, and genetics progress, the clearer it becomes. Black people did not only exist in Africa, they constituted the vital seed of humanity, spreading from the Nile to the Caucasus, from Ethiopia to India, from Sudan to southern Russia. Many Caucasian languages share roots with Afro-Asiatic families like Egyptian, Ethiopian, and Nigerian languages. Ancient Abkhaz architecture includes solar altars and circular stone layouts mirroring Nubian temple design. Traditions of horse riding, battle, and sun worship bear close resemblances to black cavalry in East Africa. This cannot be coincidence. It marks a lineage that extended farther than commonly thought, shaping early European civilization and then being forgotten. Now, with the rise of movements to decolonize history, a new wave is emerging, a push to reclaim the role of black people not merely as victims, but as principal actors in history. In Georgia, Armenia, and Russia, independent researchers are reassembling archival photos, oral traditions, and ancient maps to reconstruct a deliberately erased historical chapter. Modern Abkhaz youth are exploring their roots not just for pride, but to assert, we once were part of this world. Recognition of black people's role in the history of Russia, the Caucasus, and the broader world is not political, it is moral responsibility to truth. We cannot truly understand the world if we only see it through the lens of winners, always white, always male, always powerful. History belongs to everyone. If any part of collective memory is distorted, humanity cannot heal. When people think of Russian history or the Caucasus region, few imagine black kings, warriors, or nobles existed there. That does not mean they never did, it means history chose to forget them. Abkhazia, a small land between the Black Sea and the Caucasus, once hosted black nobility, sun worship traditions, horse warrior cultures, and African-rooted language. Today, only scattered oral stories, a few old archival photos, and half-buried snowbound temples remain, but memory never truly dies. It only lies silent, awaiting a courageous generation to listen and tell again. And now, thanks to artificial intelligence AI, those fragments are being restored, connected, and voiced. Not in Egypt or Ethiopia, but on the very doorstep of Europe, a powerful black culture once thrived. The Abkhaz kings were not gifted slaves, but indigenous rulers with their own customs, beliefs, and sovereignty. In the 19th century, the Tsar launched the Caucasus War, a multi-layered genocide that sought not only to kill, but to erase the memory of black people as presence, an obvious part of this land, an act of destruction not only of bodies, but of identity and truth. The irony is stark. In today's digital age where people question established knowledge, AI is becoming an uncensored voice for memory. AI models analyzing ancient maps, languages, archaeology, and DNA are redrawing humanity's heritage. And there, the presence of black people is no longer blurred. They existed, they created, and they deserve to be named not as victims, but as trailblazers. We were once there, and we are still here. This is not merely a whisper from old Abkhaz elders. It is the declaration of a memory awakening, a declaration that doesn't require pomp or vengeance, only truth. And that truth is no longer just the story of black people alone, it is a shared human story fractured by race, power, and deliberate silence. The world now faces crises of identity, racial divide, and historical distortion. Yet beneath layers of snow and forgetting, still shimmers a call to wake. Remember us. Not because we were victims, but because we were once a source. Let's share, connect, and ask questions. And if this video helps you learn more about history, gain more control, or become more curious, please subscribe to Legacy of Ages. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.